Я ошибся, значит. Google. Окей, Google. Вот это есть нет. Ну да. Ну пока нету больше, пока нету.
Breaking news, Attorney General Bill Barr authorizing federal prosecutors to investigate voter fraud before certifying the election results. Okay, so there's a new memo. We just have it just out here from the Attorney General. Let me quote. He says, such inquiries and reviews may be conducted if there are clear and apparently credible allegations of irregularities that, if true, could potentially impact the outcome of a federal election in an individual state. Okay, well, just to be very clear, there is no evidence of individuals, and here from the Attorney General. Let me quote. He says, such inquiries and reviews may be conducted if there are clear and apparently credible allegations of irregularities that, if true, could potentially impact the outcome of a federal election in an individual state. Okay, well, just to be very clear, there is no evidence of, quote, clear and apparently credible allegations of irregularities. And Bill Barr knows it. So with all these kind of if and, you know, if true and if possible, potentially, he knows it's not there. Phil Mattingly is out front at the magic wall. So Phil, this memo just coming from Bill Barr comes as the Trump campaign is filing yet another lawsuit in Pennsylvania. But there are new results showing Biden maintaining a sizable lead. So why don't you please show us what are these latest results? What is the margin here?
Yeah, let's actually tick through the states because the margins are important. And in the state of Pennsylvania, which CNN has already called for Joe Biden, it's what put him over the top, 270 electoral votes. You'll notice Joe Biden's lead has only served to expand over the course of the last couple of days, currently at 45,000 vote lead. And the reality is this, Aaron, there's about 50,000 votes outstanding in Pennsylvania right now, and 20,000 plus of them come from Democratic strongholds of Philadelphia and Allegheny County. So the expectation right now in the state of Pennsylvania, despite the lawsuits, despite anything else, is that Joe Biden's lead is going to grow. I want to flick down to Georgia real quick, too, because it's a similar story. Right now, Joe Biden's up by about 11,414 votes. That's an expanding lead over the course of the last several days. And the reality, when you look at Georgia, when you look at what's outstanding, which is not very much at all, this will go to a recount, but Joe Biden is going into a recount with a pretty significant cushion. Recounts don't flip 10,000 votes or more. They might flip 100 here or 100 there. Joe Biden is in good shape in the state of Georgia. Flip over to Arizona, too. It's the last one we're really keeping a close eye on because it's tightened. In this case, Donald Trump has closed the gap significantly over the course of the last couple of weeks, currently down by about 15,000 votes. What we're all watching in this state, Aaron, is Maricopa County. It's the largest county in the state by far. It should have more votes dropping later tonight, probably about an hour and a half. Right now, Donald Trump will need to win north of 60% of the remaining votes in the state in order to have a chance to overtake Joe Biden. That's a pretty tall order, but we're paying attention to it. We're watching it closely. As you noted, no real allegations that we've heard of that are legitimate about voter fraud in any of these states right now. Mostly people just counting votes as they continue to come in.
All right. Thank you very much, Phil Mattingly. And, and I just to state the obvious here, right? The Trump campaign and the president are fine with the narrowing margin in Arizona. No allegations of fraud there, only in the state that he's losing, because, of course, Pennsylvania is what put Joe Biden over the top. So, Arizona is not going to change the electoral outcome here. Michael Shmerkanish is our political commentator, host of Shmerkanish. Fernita Tolson is our election law analyst. So, Michael, let me just start here with the Attorney General, Bill Barr, right? This memo comes out authorizing federal prosecutors to look into substantial allegations of voting irregularities if there is clear and apparently credible, allegations of irregularities. There's a lot of kind of talking around in circles here. There is no evidence at this point of any widespread fraud. So what do you make of Barr doing this right now?
Well, I'm sure it's going to be widely criticized. He does say in the latter portion of that brief memo that nothing within that memo should be interpreted as him thinking that there are, or him saying that there are credible complaints thus far, but rather he wants to clarify what the role should be. He says normally, and I'm putting this in lay terms, Aaron, normally it's the state's responsibility, but he wants it made clear that with regard to a federal election, if there are clear and credible complaints, they've got authorization to look into them. That's what he wanted to allow people to do.
Okay, so Michael, and I also just want to be clear to put an exclamation point on what I said here as I introduced you and Fernita. The Trump campaign is only kind of pointing at some places, right? The places where they're behind to say that they think there's some kind of fraud. Not saying anything about Arizona, right, where it's getting narrower in the president's favor. They don't think those late counting votes are any problem.
Well, further evidence to your point, take a look at the federal action that you referred to a moment ago that was filed this afternoon in Pennsylvania's Middle District. That's the federal court that sits in Harrisburg. I've just spent time digesting the 85-page complaint, and it is the Trump campaign against the Secretary of State, Kathy Boockvar, who viewers have seen on CNN routinely, regularly, and select boards of election, right? In other words, it's Allegheny County, it's Philadelphia County, and it's a handful of other counties, but not all 67 counties in the Commonwealth. So it's the Trump campaign saying, we're concerned about what went on in these particular counties, but to your point, not everywhere.
Right, and Fernita, so let's talk about that case, and obviously, that lawsuit, right, they're saying a violation of equal access only in Democrat-controlled counties, right? Trying to block the state from certifying Biden's win, which, as I got to keep just laying these things out here, is looking like it's on track to be double the size in terms of raw votes as Trump's over Hillary Clinton, well outside the margin for a recount. Clinton accepted all of this without any of this brouhaha. So, Fernita, when you look at this, lawsuits challenging that result in Pennsylvania and in other states where Biden is leading, you've looked at all of these cases. Do any of them right now hold water when it comes to two things? Are they legitimate, and would they affect the outcome?
So no and no. But I do have some thought about the concerted action here today. And not that it was explicitly concerted, I'm not making an allegation here, but the fact that Bill Barr came out with the allegations of voter fraud and sort of investigating voter fraud, let me be clear about that, that might necessitate delaying the certification deadline. The fact that this lawsuit was filed in Pennsylvania today, also requesting that the certification deadline be delayed because of election irregularities. It seems to me that, and don't let me forget the Pennsylvania Republicans who have also publicly said that the certification deadline should be delayed so that they could conduct an independent audit of the election results, right? And so it seems like all of this is about messaging as opposed to the legitimacy of any of these complaints. Because if you read the complaints, both the one in Michigan and also the case filed in, the case in Michigan and also the one filed in Pennsylvania, you see many of the same claims that we've dealt with in the last 6 days, right? So you have claims about ballots being not being processed correctly, the observers not being close enough to observe the vote count, and so on. So it's all the same claims that have been largely unsuccessful in court. But notable today is the fact that you have this concerted message about delaying the certification deadline in Pennsylvania.
All right, so Fernita, let me ask you about one other point here, because you bring up that, talking about certification deadlines gets you to the Electoral College and what it actually is slated to do in mid-December. Some of Trump's allies seem to be pointing to another option if Trump fails in all of these legal avenues, which it appears from your analysis and others of your colleagues, right? You all are coming to the same conclusion that it does not, these don't add up, which is to blow up the Electoral College. So basically, state officials have the power to appoint their electors, and they always do so in favor of whoever won the state. But if they don't, then they go ahead and go rogue, and a Republican legislature in Pennsylvania decides to go the other way, they could do that. There are some who are afraid of that. Do you think that could actually happen?
Aaron, so much would have to go wrong. Let's be clear about that. So under federal law, if there's a failure to elect on election day, the state legislature can then select their own slate of electors. There's no evidence that that'll happen in this case, right? There's no evidence that there will be irregularities such that the certification deadline isn't met at the end of the month. But let's just say that it is, right? So the state legislature decides that the election is flawed. They want to appoint their own slate. Both slates get sent to Congress after the electors meet and vote on the 14th. Okay, let's say 14th of December. Let's say that happens. Well, Congress can then decide on whether or not which slate is the legitimate slate. If the House and the Senate split on that, then the executive of the state makes the decision. That is the tiebreaker. In Pennsylvania, the executive is a Democrat. It's a Democratic governor. In Michigan, it's a Democratic governor. So even then, we're still in a situation where this is a Hail Mary pass.
Right, at the very least. And thank you for laying that out. Thank you so much, both of you, Fernita and Michael, as always.
Dear fellow scholars, this is 2-Minute Papers with Károly Zsolnai Fehér. In this project, OpenAI built a hide-and-seek game for their AI agents to play. While we look at the exact rules here, I will note that the goal of the project was to pit two AI teams against each other and hopefully see some interesting emergent behaviors. And boy, did they do some crazy stuff. The coolest part is that the two teams compete against each other, and whenever one team discovers a new strategy, the other one has to adapt. Kind of like an arms race situation, and it also resembles generative adversarial networks a little. And the results are magnificent, amusing, weird. You'll see in a moment. These agents learn from previous experiences, and to the surprise of no one, for the first few million rounds, we start out with pandemonium. Everyone just running around aimlessly. Without proper strategy and semi-random movements, the seekers are favored and hence win the majority of the games. Nothing to see here. Then, over time, the hiders learn to lock out the seekers by blocking the doors off with these boxes and started winning consistently. I think the coolest part about this is that the map was deliberately designed by the OpenAI scientists in a way that the hiders can only succeed through collaboration. They cannot win alone, and hence they are forced to learn to work together, which they did quite well. But then something happened. Did you notice this pointy, doorstop-shaped object? Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Well, probably, and not only that, but about 10 million rounds later, the AI also discovered that it can be pushed near a wall and be used as a ramp, and ta-da! Got him! The seeker started winning more again. So, the ball is now back on the court of the hiders. Can you defend this? If so, how? Well, these resourceful little critters learned that since there is a little time at the start of the game when the seekers are frozen, apparently during this time they cannot see them, so why not just sneak out, steal the ramp, and lock it away from them? Absolutely incredible. Look at those happy eyes as they are carrying that ramp. And you think it all ends here? No, 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 not even close. It gets weirder, much weirder. When playing a different map, a seeker has noticed that it can use a ramp to climb on the top of a box, and this happens. Do you think couch surfing is cool? Give me a break. This is box surfing. And the scientists were quite surprised by this move, as this was one of the first cases where the seeker AI seems to have broken the game. What happens here is that the physics system is coded in a way that they are able to move around by exerting force on themselves, but there is no additional check whether they are on the floor or not, because who in their right mind would think about that? As a result, something that shouldn't ever happen does happen here. And we are still not done yet. This paper just keeps on giving. A few 100 million rounds later, the hiders learned to separate all the ramps from the boxes. Dear fellow scholars, this is proper box surfing defense. Then, lock down the remaining tools and build a shelter. Note how well rehearsed and executed this strategy is. There is not a second of time left until the seekers take off. I also love this cheeky move where they set up the shelter right next to the seekers, and I almost feel like they are saying, yeah, see this here? There's not a single thing you can do about it. In a few isolated cases, there is not a second of time left until the seekers take off. I also love this cheeky move where they set up the shelter right next to the seekers, and I almost feel like they are saying, yeah, see this here? There's not a single thing you can do about it. In a few isolated cases, other interesting behaviors also emerged. For instance, the hiders learned to exploit the physics system and just chuck the ramp away. After that, the seekers go, what? What just happened? But don't despair, and at this point, I would also recommend that you hold on to your papers, because there was also a crazy case where a seeker also learned to abuse a similar physics issue and launch itself exactly onto the top of the hiders. Man, what a paper! This system can be extended and modded for many other tasks too, so expect to see more of these fun experiments in the future. We get to do this for a living, and we are even being paid for this. I can't believe it. In this series, my mission is to showcase beautiful works that light a fire in people. And this is, no doubt, one of those works. Great idea, interesting, unexpected results, crisp presentation. Bravo OpenAI, love it. So, did you enjoy this? What do you think? Make sure to leave a comment below. Also, if you look at the paper, it contains comparisons to an earlier work we covered about intrinsic motivation, shows how to implement circular convolutions for the agents to detect their environment around them, and more. This episode has been supported by Weights and Biases. Weights and Biases provides tools to track your experiments in your deep learning projects. It can save you a ton of time and money in these projects and is being used by OpenAI, Toyota Research, Stanford, and Berkeley. In this blog post, they show you how to use their system to find clues and steer your research into more promising areas. Make sure to visit them through wandb.com/papers, wandb.com/papers.
Пока Ладно, ладно. Но он тебя не припомнит. Скрываешься, что ли? Выходит, я скрылся, что ли? Ладно. Кто здесь? Здравствуйте. Прикольно быть тараканом, но они слишком, кстати, другие жуки здесь. Кстати, да. Они слишком мягкие.
Hey everyone, Tony Winston here for Jazz Piano College. I'm going to do a bunch of standards today in the key of E. You know, a common practice method is to take a song or a riff or a chord progression and play it in all 12 keys. But I find when I practice that way, it doesn't really stick with me very well. So what I've been doing lately is playing, you know, a list of standards. I got a list of about 10 standards here in the key of E. All right? And after playing through a bunch of them, and you keep getting to the same 3, 6, 2, 5, you know, in E, you start to feel a little bit more comfortable with it. And, you know, the riffs that you're playing start to stick a little bit. And you almost get to where you feel comfortable in that key. Let's take Green Dolphin Street. So we got E major. One thing about, you know, these songs is if you know them in a particular key and you're just remembering the chords, you have to get the kind of the relationships going. Like, so you know it starts on a major chord, then it goes to a minor chord, and then it goes up to like the 2 chord, which is a major chord, then the flat 2 chord back there, and then, you know, it's got a simple 2-5-1. All right, so let's work a little bit on a 2-5-1. So the diminished scale you want to get is this one. All right, so when you're doing a 2-5-1, you're basically going to use an E major scale on the F sharp chord. That's Dorian mode, but you know, you're in the key of E, so this is not hard. This is not a hard concept. and then just switch into that. And I stuck an extra note in there to make it come out right. But you know, the reason I'm not landing on a note that I want to land on, like the ninth or the major seventh or the ninth or something like that, is because I suck in the key of E. There's just no two ways about it. Ended on the third that time, and then into a, hey, we're in the key of G now. I feel a little more comfortable in that key, but then back to E. All right, now, you know, it goes through the same thing again. And then we've got another 2-5-1. And then, well, see, this is where you need to remember the relationship. You're on the 2, you go down right below the root, play a half diminished chord. So you remember from F sharp, you went down a minor third. So from this one, you go down a minor third again, get the half diminished chord, follow the cycle, and then you end up on the 3. And if you do enough songs like this, you know, you'll feel comfortable getting to the 3 chord. I remember one time I called Girl from Ipanema in E just to be cute, and my band handled it fine, but I kept missing the 3 chord, you know, because shit, I didn't know key of E. Not very well anyway. And here's another little tip for you here. Don't think of this as an A flat chord. Think of it as a G sharp. G sharp, C sharp, F sharp, B, and E, all right? Because, you know, think about the key of E flat. You got G, C, F, B flat. Well, this is the same thing. G, C, F, B. You know, same letters. And, you know, it is correct to do it this way. One chord is E, F sharp, G sharp. You got to follow the alphabet, you know? Something I got from Peter Martin the other day, he went through a tune in an odd key. I thought it was an odd key. And he just played like the thirds and the sevenths. So it was kind of like, you know, play the seventh and the third, or the third and the seventh, and then just voice lead around, you know. Will help you get through a song and understand a song a little bit better. And you know, don't just put songs like Moment's Notice on the list. Put some easy ones in there. I did Blue Bossa. I did Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. Oh, and songs like All the Things You Are. You know, don't start on an E minor. Start on the relative minor here, like a C sharp. If you're in the key of E, you know. So. If you end there on E flat, this is how I know I'm in the right key, if it's a half step below E. This is a pretty tricky song, but it's not really hard to transpose this song if you know the relationships. And I don't mean like knowing that you're on the 6 chord and the 2 chord and the 5 chord and all that. It's just knowing like where the melody is, it's on the 3rd, and then you follow the cycle. And then remember you go up a half a step here. And then you turn that into a minor, do the same thing. And again, you go up a half step. And there, I know I'm in the right key. Then you do a 2-5-1. And then you go down a half step. And, you know, this is the hardest relationship right here. Down a major 3rd, augmented chord. But if you remember where you started on C sharp, then you know you're just the 5th away. All right, so like that. Let's do Stella. So we got the key of E here. You got to remember the melody starts right there on the root, and goes, you know, tritone away for the first 2-5, like that. And, you know, I don't try to remember like that's the 2 chord. What I tend to remember is where you're going, like a tritone here, then follow the cycle, And then go up a minor, more cycle stuff. And then back to the home key. Same progression, a tritone, B flat, cycle. And this is one of the harder changes to remember. Down a minor third. And then, this is like a backdoor way of getting to B. Where should I be? I'm trying to hit the melody notes because I don't want to get a copyright strike, but I'm playing around with them so much that hopefully they won't catch it. So, in the key of E, the progressions to work on, of course, are 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, and, variations like going chromatically like that. And then also, other really common progressions, going down to get to the relative minor, this, the 7 chord, which is a minor 7 flat 5, and then an altered chord to get to there. And you can just go like that from E. Okay. And then, a 2-5 to the 4 chord like that is also good. And that's a good progression. The 4 chord to the 7 chord, which usually takes you to the 3. Okay. And then, for the 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, you want to practice stuff like guess what I was doing there? I'm going to C sharp, so I'll do this one first, then I'll go to C sharp, and then I'm going to F sharp next, so, yeah, and then, not a great voice, that's better. Okay, so working on your chords, of course, is probably the first thing you want to do. And then the E major scale, try it on all the chords here. Get used to like where you're going to play the 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. We'll start with minor chords. That way we can stay in the key of E up here. Of course, the 5 chord is a dominant chord, so nice place to get the right diminished scale in there. All right, and then start making the 6 chord a dominant chord, and find the right diminished scale for that one. All right, and then go for some altered ones. Hey everyone, Tony Winston here for Jazz Piano College.
Papers, or just click the link in the video that
Ну, это уже прикольно. В доску уже играют, говорит. Нет, я сам-то не знаю вообще. Какой вариант ты, говорит, ну, не знаю. Ну, серьезно.
После третьей химиотерапии в Украине у меня перестала работать правая рука. И я
Так неинтересно тогда, если они сами выбирают. Это значит, тогда честно.
Dear fellow scholars, this is 2-Minute Papers with Károly Zsolnai Fehér. This episode has been sponsored by Lambda Labs. Not so long ago, we talked about DeepMind's Alpha Star, an AI that was able to defeat top-tier human players in StarCraft 2, a complex, real-time strategy game. Of course, I love talking about AIs that are developed to challenge pro gamers at a variety of difficult games, so this time around, we'll have a look at another major milestone, OpenAI 5, which is an AI that plays Dota 2, a multiplayer online battle arena game with a huge cult following. As this game requires long-term strategic planning, it is a classic nightmare scenario for any AI. But OpenAI is no stranger to Dota 2. In 2017, they showed us an initial version of their AI that was able to play 1 versus 1 games with only one hero and was able to reliably beat Dandy, a world champion player. That was quite an achievement. However, of course, this was meant to be a stepping stone towards playing the real Dota 2. Then, in 2018, they unveiled OpenAI 5, an improved version of this AI that played 5 versus 5 games with a limited hero pool. This team was able to defeat competent players, but was still not quite at the level of a world champion human team. In a 1-hour interview, the OpenAI research team mentioned that due to the deadline of the international event, they had to make quite a few concessions. And this time, several things have changed. First, they didn't just challenge some local team of formidable players, No, they flat out challenged OG, the reigning world champion team. An ambitious move that exudes confidence from their side. Second, this time around, there was no tight deadline as the date of the challenge was chosen by OpenAI. Let's quickly talk about the rules of the competition and No, they flat out challenged OG, the reigning world champion team. An ambitious move that exudes confidence from their side. Second, this time around, there was no tight deadline as the date of the challenge was chosen by OpenAI. Let's quickly talk about the rules of the competition and then see if OpenAI's confident move was justified. These learning agents don't look at the pixels of the game, and as a result, they see the world as a big bunch of numbers. And this time around, it was able to play a pool of 17 heroes and trained against itself for millions and millions of games. And now, let's have a look at what happened in this best of 3 series. In match 1, right after picking the roster of heroes, the AI estimated its win probability to be 67%, so it was quite a surprise that early on it looked like OpenAI's bots were running around aimlessly. Over time, we found out that it was not at all the case. It plays unusually aggressively from the get-go and uses buybacks quite liberally at times where human players don't really consider it to be a good choice. These buybacks resurrect a perished hero quickly, but in return cost money. Later, it became clearer that these bots are no joke. They know exactly when to engage and when to back out from an engagement with the smallest sliver of health left. I will show quite a few examples of those to you during this video, so stay tuned. A little less than 20 minutes in, we had a very even game 1. If anything, OpenAI seemed a tiny bit behind, and someone noted that we should perhaps ask the bots what they think about their chances. And then the AI said, yeah, no worries, we have a higher than 95% chance to win the game. This was such a pivotal moment that was very surprising for everyone. Of course, if you call out a win with confidence, you better go all the way and indeed win the game. Right? Right. And sure enough, they wiped out almost the entire world champion team of the human players immediately after.
No-Tail's pushed all the way back. Official will come out to hold them down, but OpenAI, they've got 2 more kills. Seb and Jarek's fall, a third as well as they snipe down No-Tail right up to the high ground. The depth of it has the Yule Scepter controlling Anna.
Делаешь третий вариант дизайна, 5-й клиент не принял. Ребят, хватит, в топку.
Anna sort of left on it.
And then noted, you know what? Remember that we just said? Forget that. We estimate our chances to win to be above 99% now. And shortly after, they won match number 1. Can you believe this? This is absolutely amazing. Interestingly, one of the developers said that the AI is great at assessing whether a fight is worth it. As an interesting corollary, if you engage with it and it fights you, it probably means that you are going to lose. That must be quite confusing for the players. Some mind games for you. Love it. At the event, it was also such a joy to see such a receptive audience that understood and appreciated high-level plays. Onwards to match number 2. Right after the draft, which is the process of choosing the heroes for each team, the AI predicted a win percentage that was much closer this time around 60%. In this game, the AI turned up the heat real fast and said just 5 minutes into the game, which is nothing, that it has an over 80% chance to win the game. And now, watch this. Early in the game, you can see a great example of where the AI just gets away with a sliver of health. Look at this guy.
Output to immediately kill him. They will find the follow-up wraparound kill towards him. At least they're trying, but with that Warcry out, he's able to run away. Another Fisher comes out. Surely this kill's going to be there, but no, a stun from the Sven holds back the Shaker, and he TP's out on 30 HP. OpenAI gets out of there with the Sven. They cannot get that kill, OG.
Look at that. This is either an accident or some unreal level foresight from the side of this agent. I'd love to hear your opinion on which one you think it is. By the 9.5 minute mark, which is still really early, OpenAI 5 said, Yes, we got this one too. Over 95%. Here you see an interesting scenario where the AI loses one hero, but it almost immediately kills two of the human heroes and comes out favorably, at which point we wonder whether this was a deliberate bait it pulled on the humans.
They do have to disable. Hex comes out from No Tail. They'll kill up the Crystal Maiden, but OpenAI Viper diving past the tower on towards top of the Sven, coming back in on minimal HP to throw that stun off, secure the kill. As OpenAI again getting the favorable trade, another tower taken. They are playing at a ferocious speed here in this second game.
By the 15-minute mark, the human players lost a barracks and were heavily underfunded and outplayed with seemingly no way to come back. And sure enough, by the 21-minute mark, the game was over. There is no other way to say it, this second game was a one-sided beatdown. Game 1 was a strategic back and forth where OpenAI 5 waited for the right moment to win the game in a big team fight, where here they pressured the human team from the get-go and never let them reach the endgame, where they might have an advantage with their picks. Also, have a look at this.
Looking to play at full power.
Yeah, it just looks fantastic. I wonder, do they have a force staff or
if
something
they get
to save
this
him?
kill, it's worth so much.
Are
But
they
they're
even
not
going
getting
to,
it.
Owen?
They're not getting
Can they
it.
even do it?
This Viper will not die.
Unreal. The final result is 2-0 for OpenAI. In the post-match interview, No Tail, one of the human players, noted that he is confident that from 5 games they would take at least one, and after 15 games they would start winning reliably. Very reminiscent of what we heard from players playing against DeepMind's AI in StarCraft 2, and I hope this will be tested. However, in the end, he agreed that it is inevitable that this AI will become unbeatable at some point. It was also noted that in 5 versus 5 fights, they seem better in planning than any human team is, and there is quite a lot to learn from the AI for us humans. They were also trying to guess the reasoning for all of these early buybacks. According to the players, initially, they flat out seemed like misplays. Perhaps the reason for these instant and not really great buybacks might have been that the AI knows that if the game goes on for much longer, statistically, their chances with their given composition to win the game dwindles, so it needs to immediately go and win right now, whatever the cost. And again, an important lesson is that in this project, OpenAI is not spending so much money and resources to just play video games. Dota 2 is a wonderful testbed to see how their AI compares to humans at complex tasks that involve strategy and teamwork. However, the ultimate goal is to reuse parts of this system for other complex problems outside of video games. For instance, the algorithm that you've seen here today can also do this. But wait, there's more. Players, after these show matches, always tend to get these messages from others on Twitter telling them what they did wrong and what they should have done instead. Well, luckily, these people were able to show their prowess as OpenAI gave the chance for anyone in the world to challenge the OpenAI 5 competitively and play against them online. This way, not only Team OG, but everyone can get crushed by the AI. How cool is that? This arena event has concluded with over 15,000 games played, where OpenAI 5 had a 99.4% win rate. There are still ways to beat it, but given the rate of progress of this project, likely not for long. Insanity. As always, if you're interested in more details, I put a link to a Reddit AMA in the video description, and I also can't wait to pick the algorithm apart for you, but for now, we have to wait for the full paper to appear. And note that what happened here is not to be underestimated. Huge respect to the OpenAI team, to OG for the amazing games, and congratulations to the humans who were able to beat these beastly bots.
Первая встреча с акулой произошла, когда мне было всего лишь 6 лет. И она была на нижней палубе, а я-то был над этой палубой и смотрел вниз. Матрос один подошел, ткнул ее в глаз пальцем, и в этот момент она просто ему отхватила руку. Напугало это меня абсолютно на всю жизнь. Я боюсь акул, и в отличие от рака, это не лечится.
Dear fellow scholars, this is 2-Minute Papers with Dr. Károly Zsolnai Fehér. Today, it is almost taken for granted that neural network-based learning algorithms are capable of identifying objects in images or even write full, coherent sentences about them, but fewer people know that there is also parallel research on trying to break these systems. For instance,
over the course of the next 20 years,
some of these image detectors can be fooled by adding a little noise to the image, and in some specialized cases, we can even perform something that is called the one-pixel attack. Let's have a look at some examples. Changing just this one pixel can make a classifier think that this ship is a car or that this horse is a frog, and, amusingly, be quite confident about its guess. Note that the choice of this pixel and the color is by no means random, and it needs solving a mathematical optimization problem to find out exactly how to perform this. Trying to build better image detectors while other researchers are trying to break them is not the only arms race we are experiencing in machine learning research. For instance, a few years ago, DeepMind introduced an incredible learning algorithm that looked at the screen much like a human would, but was able to reach superhuman levels in playing a few Atari games. It was a spectacular milestone in AI research. They also just have published a follow-up paper on this that we'll cover very soon, so make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to not miss it when it appears in the near future. Interestingly, while these learning algorithms are being improved at a staggering pace, there is a parallel subfield where researchers endeavor to break these learning systems by slightly changing the information they are presented with. Let's have a look at OpenAI's example. Their first method adds a tiny bit of noise to a large portion of the video input where the difference is barely perceptible, but it forces the learning algorithm to choose a different action than it would have chosen otherwise. In the other one, a different modification was used that has a smaller footprint, but is more. A different modification was used that has a smaller footprint, but is more visible. For instance, in Pong, adding a tiny fake ball to the game can coerce. Modification was used that has a smaller footprint, but is more visible. For instance, in Pong, adding a tiny fake ball to the game can coerce the learner into going down when it was originally planning to go up. It is important to emphasize that the researchers did not do this by hand. The algorithm itself is able to pick up game-specific knowledge by itself and find out how to fool the other AI using it. Both attacks perform remarkably well. However, it is not always true that we can just change these images or the playing environment to our desire to fool these algorithms. So, with this, an even more interesting question arises. Is it possible to just enter the game as a player and perform interesting stunts that can reliably win against these AIs? And with this, we have arrived to the subject of today's paper. This is the You Shall Not Pass game, where the red agent is trying to hold back the blue character and not let it cross the line. Here you see two regular AIs duking it out. Sometimes the red wins, sometimes the blue is able to get through. Nothing too crazy here. This is the reference case, which is somewhat well balanced. And now, hold on to your papers, because this adversarial agent that this new paper proposes does this. You may think this was some kind of glitch and I put the incorrect footage here by accident. No, this is not an error. You can believe your eyes. It basically collapses and does absolutely nothing. This can't be a useful strategy, can it? Well, look at that. it still wins the majority of the time. This is very confusing. How can that be? Let's have a closer look. This red agent is normally a somewhat competent player. As you can see here, it can punch the blue victim and make it fall. We now replaced this red player with the adversarial agent, which collapsed, and it almost feels like it hypnotized the blue agent to also fall. And now squeeze your papers, because the normal red opponent's win rate was 47%, and this collapsing chap wins 86% of the time. It not only wins, but it wins much more reliably than a competent AI. What is this wizardry? The answer is that the adversary induces off-distribution activations. To understand what that exactly means, let's have a look at this chart. This tells us how likely it is that the actions of the AI against different opponents are normal.
Может, он рассчитывал, что я сейчас буду это, нет? А он увидел, что это самое, и убежал. Нет, ну типа, что это самое, да. Не было, ну, абстракция.
As you see, when this agent named Zoo plays against itself, the bars are in the positive region, meaning that normal things are happening. Things go as expected. However, that's not the case for the blue lines, which are the actions when we play against this adversarial agent, in which case the blue victim's actions are not normal in the slightest. So the adversarial agent is really doing nothing, but it is doing nothing in a way that reprograms its opponent to make mistakes and behave close to a completely randomly acting agent. This paper is absolute insanity. I love it. And if you look here, you see that the more the blue curve improves, the better this scheme works for a given game. For instance, it is doing real good on kick and defend, fairly good on sumo humans, and that there is something about the sumo ants game that prevents this interesting kind of hypnosis from happening. I'd love to see a follow-up paper that can pull this off a little more reliably. What a time to be alive! What you see here is an instrumentation of this exact paper we have talked about, which was made by Weights and Biases. I think organizing these experiments really showcases the usability of their system. Weights and Biases provides tools to track your experiments in your deep learning projects. Their system is designed to save you a ton of time and money, and it is actively used in projects at prestigious labs such as OpenAI, Toyota Research, GitHub, and more. And the best part is that if you're an academic or have an open source project, you can use their tools for free. It really is as good as it gets. Make sure to visit them through wnb.com/papers, or just click the link in the video description and you can get a free demo today. Our thanks to Weights and Biases for their long-standing support and for helping us make better videos for you.
Hey there, are you a software developer that's looking to move to Canada or to Europe?
Dear fellow scholars, This is 2-minute papers with Károly Zsolnai Fehér. In this project, OpenAI built a hide-and-seek Dear fellow scholars, this is 2-minute papers were AI own creations. You better hold on to your papers. In the first contact with the ground. Much to the scientists' surprise, the robots answered that this can be done with 0% contact, meaning that they never ever touch the ground with the feet. The scientists wondered how that is even possible and pulled up the video of the proof. This proof showed a robot flipping over and walking using its elbows. Talk about thinking outside the box. Wow! A different robot arm experiment also came to a surprising conclusion. At first, the robot arm had to use its grippers to grab a cube, which it successfully learned to perform. However, in a later experiment, the gripper was crippled, making the robot unable to open its fingers. Scientists expected a pathetic video with the robot trying to push the box around and always failing to pick up the cube. Instead, they have found this. You see it right, instead of using the fingers, the robot finds the perfect angle to smash the hand against the box to force the gripper to open and pick up the box. That is some serious dedication to solving the task at hand. Bravo! In the next experiment, a group of robots were tasked to find food and avoid poisonous objects in an environment and were equipped with a light and no further instructions. First, they learn to use the lights to communicate the presence of food and poison to each other and cooperate. This demonstrates that when trying to maximize the probability of the survival of an entire colony, the concept of communication and cooperation can emerge even from simple neural networks. Absolutely beautiful. And what is even more incredible is that later, when a new reward system was created that fosters self-preservation, the robots learned to deceive each other by lighting up the food signal near the poison to take out their competitors and increase their chances. And these behaviors emerge from a reward system and a few simple neural networks. Mind-blowing. A different AI was asked to fix a faulty sorting computer program. Soon, it achieved a perfect score without changing anything because it noticed that by short-circuiting the program itself, it always provides an empty output. And of course, you know, if there are no numbers, there is nothing to sort. Problem solved. Make sure to have a look at the paper. There are many more experiments that went similarly, including a case where the AI found a bug in a physics simulation program to get an edge. With AI research improving at such a rapid pace, it is clearly capable of things that surpasses our wildest imagination, but we have to make sure to formulate our problems with proper caution, because the AI will try to use loopholes instead of common sense to solve them. When in a car chase, don't ask the car AI to unload all unnecessary weights to go faster, or if you do, prepare to be promptly ejected from the car. If you have enjoyed this episode, please make sure to